Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I am using a stamp brand that I haven't used in a video before, Avery Elle. I really love these designs, especially the peekaboo creatures. In this video I'll be using the peekaboo pals and the peekaboo jungle sets, so I'll make sure I put a picture of them up here. They are adorable. There's just something about them that I really like. I used my Cricut Maker for this one to cut these little Polaroid pictures out. I just whipped them up in Design Space. It took no time at all. I just used a rectangle with a square in it, and then I cut them so that I could take the square out and use it as a Polaroid. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then I might do some videos on how to make simple things to decorate cards using a Cricut. I stamped some little sentiments onto these Polaroids, mostly using the sentiments from the Peekaboo Pals set. These little Polaroids fit the sentiments perfectly, whereas the jungle ones I think they were a little bit too big. So I've got hello, you're the best, and just wanted to say I miss you. For this card, I used two little Polaroids and one big one for the center. This one I used a couple of layers of my cardstock and stacked them on top of each other to give it a little bit more dimension. I then also used some foam tape to prop it up a bit more, but we'll get to that a bit later. Once they were ready, I then got on to choosing which animals I wanted to use for this card. I chose the elephant, the monkey, the hippo, and the cheetah. I did stamp the lion in the beginning as well, but I changed my mind on him. I then stamped out all those little feet. Once my stamping was done, it was time to get these cuties coloured in. I have been challenging myself a lot lately to use minimal colours and minimal Copics with these craft projects. I only own 15 Copic markers, and so I have to come up with combinations that work with very limited colours. Using so few colours is giving me really good practice with blending because I'm only using 2 in the one spot rather than 3, 4 or 5. I'm just finding that it's not too overwhelming and it's really helping me focus on the little things. If you've watched some of my videos before, then you know that pretty much every creature I stamp gets cheeks. So I did little cheeks on all of these guys, and I used my white jelly roll markers to add some white details. If you'd like to skip past the rest of my colouring, I finish up at about 4 minutes 40. Now that my colouring was done, it was time to decide what I wanted to do for the background. I grabbed a white piece of cardstock and measured it up against my card base, leaving just the tiniest little border around it. I then gave it a trim so that it was the right size. I've been experimenting a little bit with different kinds of backgrounds. I do like to do a lot of ink blending, and I do kind of like the watercolor look as well. So I used some orange and yellow ink, I watered them down, and then I just started dabbing my paper in it. I really like that this kind of gives a little bit of a marbled effect, and it's very random, which is a little bit unusual for me because I can be a little bit of a perfectionist, but I really do like how these turn out. Once I gave it some time to dry, I got out my watercolor pigments and I used the red gold for this. And there it is, all done and super shiny. They are a must-have in my craft area. I love using those watercolor pigments so much. Using an erasable pen, I marked out where the corners are for the backgrounds of each of these Polaroids. I tried a few different things here to get the background that I wanted. A bit of trial and error was involved in this one, but I did end up using both ways, and I'll show you what I did. And for those who have a good eye, you would have just seen my black cat running across my craft mat, as she does. So here I'm using those same inks that I used for the background. I sprayed them down, mixed them up, and then started dabbing my paper in it to get the same effect that I did for the big piece of card for the background. Once that was done, I then took the solid leaf from the jungle set and started stamping it in a light green ink all over the place. I did end up doing this for all 3 pieces of card, but the only one that I used was the big one. Once I had done stamping in the light green ink, I then just did some sporadic dark green ones on top to give it a little bit of a foresty or a jungle look. To keep things consistent, I then used that same watercolor pigment to splatter some of those gold flecks over the background. And again, with consistency, I wanted the same background for the 2 little Polaroids, but I wasn't going to add cardstock in the back because it wouldn't give any depth to these. So what I did was stamp directly onto the background. It was a little bit scary. I was worried I would ruin the entire background, but to keep things nice and neat, I used some spare Polaroid cutouts that I had and stamped within those borders. Because I had used an erasable pen, I then went and rubbed out those little markers that I had used to guide my backgrounds. And now for one of the fun parts, I got to start gluing my little animals in. I made sure I stuck the animals down first before I put the Polaroid on top of them. This is because the bottom of the frame is nice and thick and it could hide any of the extra length of the body that I didn't need. I then repeated this for the cheetah on the other side. For the largest Polaroid, I had already done off camera some foam dots on the back of this one to give it even more dimension. I really wanted it to stand out and add a bit of depth to the front of this card. Because it was so deep, there was plenty of room to slip that background in it and have the animals on top. It was then time to add my final animals, the elephant and the cheeky monkey hanging from the top. Adding the feet to these little creatures is my favourite part of using these sets. I love how it takes it from a little 2-dimensional animal to something a little bit more 3D. I just think this set is really clever, and that's why with Avery Elle I managed to branch away from some of my other favourite brands and try something a bit different. I loaded up the back of this with some double-sided tape and stuck this entire piece onto my card base. I was nearly done, but I felt like the front of the card needed just a few more things. So I put some tiny glue dots around the edges of the card, and I used some sequins in both orange and yellow to match the background. I then also did the same with the glue and added some itty bitty yellow stars. I have been messaged and asked a few times where I get these tiny stars from. I just get them from cheap shops here. They're always in the craft section. They maybe cost $1 or $2 for a whole packet of them. If you do try to find these online, I would suggest searching for something like tiny star sequins, or I do believe that they're also used in fingernail art, so maybe in those categories. I've also seen them used in homemade slime, so I hope those categories help you find them if that's what you're looking for. I have them in an assortment of colours. They are really tiny, but they are so cute, and I really feel like they just make some of my backgrounds. They're adorable. If you're enjoying this card, please make sure you give it a thumbs up so that I know to make more things like this. If you're new to this channel, please don't forget to subscribe. I am going to start putting some more Avery Elle art on this channel and a few other brands that I'm falling for as well. So here it is finished. I am so happy with this card. I think it's going to make some fantastic happy mail for the little guy I'm sending it off to. And here are some pictures of the final product. I hope you love it. See you next time. Bye.